Hey everyone, Matt here, obviously. So I've talked about Ether's Oath before on the podcast and how we've decided to partner with them so we can actually have a really good group of people just taking care of our merch. Hey Joe, hey Mackenzie, how did Ether's Oath get started?
I just kind of wanted to make like my own clothes, just at least shirts wise, because I have like too many shirts at home, so I wanted to like start being more picky with what I wore. But I definitely wanted to tap into like a music market for like people who are more rock and metal oriented, because I feel there aren't a ton of clothing lines that kind of go with that.
And when it comes to designs, Ether's Oath is definitely inspired by gothic, hardcore, tarot, and especially the metal genre as well. Looking at Ether's Oath merch, there's a lot of influence in this. And with that being said, how have your customers received and how have they felt about your product?
We've had a couple drops so far. In our initial one, everyone was really drawn to it. We dropped a tarot card of our face of Ether's Oath, which is Ether herself, and she's our Reaper. And people have really enjoyed it. We have gotten lots of feedback as far as what people would like to see, what type of merch for both men and women, and it's been really exciting so far. And a lot of people have been asking more about what we're having for the future and what's coming up.
With a big future ahead of you and a lot more plans coming through the pipeline coming into 2020, where could everyone go to get their own Ether's Oath branded merch?
If you want to do it online, you can go to ethersoath.com. It's AETHERSOATH.com. We have all of our products up there, from stickers, posters to shirts, and we're going to be at the Pancake Festival November 21st at a booth, and we have like a big ass banner, so you're not going to be able to miss us. And we'll have all of our stuff there as well.
Here to there, girls and gals, we decided to team up with Ether's Oath because they not only care about what they're doing and their products, but they care about the people that they take care of. That's why we love them. That's why we decided to partner with them. So please check out ethersoath.com today. Again, that is AETHERS oath.com. All right, thank you. What is up, ghouls and gals, creeps and mutants? The Undead Matt here with another Band Showcase episode. Today is a solid one, no doubt. I'm joined by Liam Singer of the band Timekeeper. They are a hardcore band coming out of Minneapolis. They're really fun to listen to, and Liam's just a really cool dude to talk to. And I know everyone we're bringing on here is really cool to talk to, but you know me, I always have to point out the obvious stuff. With that being said, Timekeeper is an awesome band, so please check out their music in the links below. Make sure you stay tuned after this episode to hear some of Timekeeper's music, as well as we are going to showcase it. And also, please follow and support them. And also, being that this might be the last Band Showcase episode of the year, I hope not. There still might be one more that we can come out with. Time will tell, but just in case, if this is the last one, I want to give another big, huge thanks to all of you ghouls and gals and creeps and mutants for continually listening to these episodes and following these bands and listening to their music. That's purely why we do this segment and do this show, is to bring those underground upcoming bands and give them that spotlight so that new listeners can find them, just because we're well aware of what the music industry is like, and if we can provide an avenue for these bands to get discovered, then we're more than happy to do it. And so thank you for another full successful year of Band Showcase episodes. It's been awesome. We've had some amazing bands come on, and it's just so surreal how supportive all of you are. So please continue telling your friends and family about us and about the Band Showcase episodes, and please continue showing these bands to your friends and families, especially if you really like them. It's all dependent on you amazing people, and just, again, thank you so much. You're amazing. With that being said, let's jump into my interview with Liam from Timekeeper. There we are. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Punk Rock Horror Podcast Band Showcase episode. This is a segment where we bring on underground and up-and-coming as well and give them that promotion and spotlight they need. Today I am joined with Liam from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and the band Timekeeper. Welcome, Liam. How's it going?
Pretty good. You sound about as nervous as I did for a second, dude. You're like, am I going to get this right?
Oh, no. It was because I for some reason, I tripped over saying the word Minneapolis, and I wanted to say Minnesota. and
Gotcha,
not
gotcha.
Minneapolis first, and then I started tripping over myself, and I'm like, this is going great.
Right, yeah.
But welcome on, man. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Thanks for coming to talk to us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having us, dude. It was kind of unexpected, to be honest. Like, we just got hit up by a friend, and they're like, hey, we put you in for submission for this interview. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, we've had a lot of people, like, do that before for us, but I can't tell you how many times it's fallen through, to be honest. So I'm, like, kind of glad it did. I was like...
I'm glad to hear that. I mean, that's why we do the show, is that we try to reach out to bands who are ready for that push, and we bring them on.
Right.
Yeah, your friend Kat Wolf, she's really awesome. She hooked us up with Become Ethereal and Seeking Strategy past few months ago, and we reached out to her because we needed another band for the month of November, and she connected us to you. I checked out your music, and I loved what I heard, and long story short, now you're here.
Yeah, it actually times out well, because I have a birthday coming up, so this is a little cool birthday present for me. It's like coming up in a couple days, so I'm like, it actually worked out, dude.
Well, happy early birthday.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
So, with that being said, who is Timekeeper, and how did Timekeeper...
Oh, man, to identify us as, like, a single collective unit is actually really hard. The way it got started was actually because, like, years ago, I had this band with a few friends of mine, and we wrote some music, and just as we were about to, like, go and release everything, our drummer decided that it wasn't exactly what he wanted to do, and shortly after I left, because I was dealing with, like, a lot of substance abuse at the time, and so I just felt like, I had been with the drummer for so long, and then he left, and I just felt like I wasn't in a great place to lead. And I ended up getting cleaned up and everything like that, and like a couple years down the road from that. And I started doing Timekeeper as like an open mic instrumental thing, so I would go there and play all the heavy metal instrumentals and everything that we have. And after a bit, I saw that the guys that were in the other band, were looking for a drummer. And so I found him a drummer, and I was just kind of like, hey, like, I'm in a better spot now. If you guys ever need a guitarist, like, just let me know. And they were like, well, actually, the guy we were using just kind of like ghosted us, so we're totally down for that if you're open to it. And so I had started building a little bit of a following with this, not much, but a little bit, more current than what the old project had. So we decided to take the old songs we had and actually give them like a proper release. And so that's just kind of how it started.
Well, first of all, thank you for being so honest about everything that you were going through at the time. I mean, we're well aware how sensitive the subject of substance abuse can be, and good for you for getting on the right track with that, man. Bravo.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually like opening up about it because it's not something that like a lot of us really talk about. But also, I mean, it played a big role in like everything I do up to date. Like, while I was doing that type of stuff, like, I learned a lot about booking, about handling like business, and just like learning about branding and how to like songwrite and do it. And so like it carries into a lot of what I'm doing now. So that's why I like to, when I'm in these kind of situations, be able to bring it up, because I feel like it just kind of gives more of a backstory as to how I transitioned into things, if that makes sense.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is your past with substance abuse an influence for how you write songs or how you play?
To a degree. I mean, it affected the way I write, because I started programming out a lot of different melodies and stuff like that while I was using it, and I found a more effective way for myself to pump out more material. I wouldn't say that it affects the way I play or a lot of lyrical content. I mean, some of the experiences and stuff like that I have will be kind of talked about more vaguely in like some of our upcoming material, but at that same point, like, we usually keep things like that pretty vague so that when people are listening and watching the lyrics scroll on the screen and everything like that, they can kind of make their own interpretation of it and make it more personally relatable to them, if you know what I mean.
I understand what you're saying. It sounds like you're kind of going at the angle of being more of an advocate for it. Being an outlet for people who maybe are struggling with it or prior struggled with it.
Right.
And I think that's really great. I mean, it's obviously nothing new in the realm of hardcore music where this is talked about, but I do think it's also an issue that always needs to be continued to talk about. And I'll say that because the way you brought up how you like to bring up in your conversations, and I feel that because I'm the same with my PTSD. I feel that with these type of issues, not talking about it makes it harder to talk about it. And so it's a weird line to figure out how to navigate. So, bravo. Now, Timekeeper, for all of our listeners who haven't, heard your music yet, is a very hardcore sounding type of music. Where did the idea and the inspiration for your sound come, and was this always the direction you wanted to go in?
Actually, that's a real hard one to answer. Like, when I was like 16 or so, I started listening to bands like August Burns Red and stuff like that, and I got really into it, and I wanted to write that style of music so bad, and I sucked at it. It was horrible. It was honestly like the worst music you could have ever heard. And so as time went on, my influences and I guess for lack of better words, my artistic direction kind of ended up pulling me in a different direction than what I was going in. But as I'm writing, that's just kind of what naturally comes out. It's not something that's like overly intentional by any means. Like, it's just kind of like, okay, I like to listen to this style of music, like, let's write something that sounds cool to me. And yeah.
Do you think no, you're cool. Do you think it's harder to write a song with the intention for it to sound a certain way, or to just write a song and build a sound around it?
Honestly, I think it's a lot easier to build a sound around it, because when you come up with something cool, like, it's like when you try and make a joke to make people laugh and it just really bombs, but then you're in just like a natural conversation with your friend and all of a sudden it's like the funniest thing in the world. You know what I mean? It's the same thing with music. Like, if you try to write something that everyone's gonna love, like, you're gonna put more effort into it and more strain on like the thought process instead of like just letting it flow. So like when I'm sitting there at the keyboard punching everything in, like, I'm just going for something that flows and something that like sounds really cool versus being like, all right, I'm going to write something like this, because every single time I do that, it ends up flopping. Like, every time I try to go downstairs to play guitar and intentionally write something, it is trash. And so I think it's a lot better just to kind of like let it flow, play around with some ideas, and just get something that you vibe with rather than trying to put out a product for people to consume, I
understand where you're coming from completely. And that being said, we had Joseph from Taking Alpha come on, and they're another hardcore band out here in Denver. And he talked about what it was also like to kind of write these songs, and for him, his influence is talking about mental illness and stuff in that realm. Do you feel that if you tried writing, these types of influences in other type of genre of music, it would work, or it would work any better, or do you feel that hardcore is the best place for this?
Honestly, I think that any place is the right place for it. Like, what it boils down to, like, especially with like our lyrical content, if you go and you read through them, like, you're gonna get your own interpretation of what it is, and those types of lyrics can fit into anything. Like, when I'm listening to just kind of like that ambient indie type of stuff, or if it's spoken word or hip hop or whatever it is, like, they all have the same types of issues. They're the problems that we go through. What the problem isn't really relevant to anything. It's just the fact that there is a problem problem, and it's some sort of self-help to get through things, so I don't think that it's necessarily it necessarily has to be like heavy hardcore type stuff. I believe they'd fit in everywhere. It's just what happens to work for us.
Very well answered. I think that really is a good answer for that type of question.
Thanks. Thank you.
So, on your Spotify, at least, your latest single is Titan.
Yeah.
You also, this is your follow-up to your last single, Viridian. Do you want to talk a little bit about Titan and what that song's about and how it came to be?
So going back to the kind of sorry, I have to pull up the lyrics actually to remember all of it, so I'm so sorry. Give me just a moment here.
No worries.
So, I'm totally locking up. I'm sorry. Can you just repeat the question for me?
No worries. I was just asking you about your latest single, Titan, and what that process was like for writing that song and what influenced it.
Oh, well, what actually influenced it, musically, is the other guys in the band were just because I write a lot of the material and then I kind of hand it to them and be like, hey, can we use this? Do we need to change anything? Blah, blah, blah. And they were like, well, we need to be heavier. We need to have more breakdowns. And so I was like, okay. So I ended up going home one day and I just wrote something and I was like, you know what? This is actually pretty tight. So let's send it over to them. They all ended up liking it. So in terms of how it came about musically, it was just because they wanted something and I happened to be playing around with an idea and it all flowed together really well. Lyrically, it's really hard. It's the first one I've worked with another person in terms of lyrical content, and that's Billy, our vocalist. I mean, he just joined on, so it was his first time coming to this, and my first time being like, all right, I'm gonna sit back. You can write some of these lyrics and everything like that. I got a few to start off with, and basically it's actually really hard because it comes into just the spirituality of it all. For me personally, I've seen a lot of different hallucinations, experienced a lot of different things while I was dealing with the substance abuse, and so I kind of took part of that story that was personal for me at the time, and I just kind of threw little bits and pieces of that vaguely into the lyrical content. And he also had a couple of parts where he's like, all right, I think this fits the vibe of what you're going with, and so we kind of ran with that.
Perfect. I mean, Titan's an awesome single. I can definitely see now where all the breakdowns are coming from. Now it makes more sense.
Yep. That was not intentional to write a whole song of breakdowns, but it just kind of ended up sounding really cool. So
maybe you guys should. Maybe you should just kind of be a little meta about it and do a whole song that is only breakdowns.
Dude,
call it
right.
Breakdown.
Right.
Titan's an awesome single. You're coming a long way. What are some hurdles that you as a band have had to face that you had to overcome that you're comfortable talking about with on the podcast?
A hurdle between us personally, or do you mean on the road with other bands? Is there something more specific?
Either would be fine. I guess would more so meaning when it comes to recording or playing shows, what are some hurdles that you have to overcome? I mean, do you have... Go ahead.
So with recording, the biggest hurdle is the fact that we really suck at it. So we go in there, for instance, when we did Titan, I just learned that the week before, because when I'm writing everything, I program it all out because I really don't find myself to be the best at writing on guitar. So I have to program it out, put it into a guitar tabbing program, and learn it from there. And so I'm a huge procrastinator. It's something I dealt with my whole life. So one hurdle I think that's I can speak for all of us when we talk about that. If we don't have to do something, we don't get on it right away. So when we went into the studio with it, it's we had just learned it the week before, and so all these riffs are kind of sloppy, and we're trying to figure out how can we play these things, and just becoming more prepared. That's what we find to be the biggest challenge, because you can always try to prepare for it as much as you can, but we get into these situations like going on the road, recording in the studio, writing, practicing, recording videos. Like, there's always something that we're not prepared for, and so I'd say that's the biggest hurdle that we've had to face.
So, with that in mind, I mean, we hear a lot about what the Denver scene is like because, I mean, we're a Colorado podcast. Obviously, we have a lot of Colorado bands come on. But whenever we have out-of-state bands come on, I always try to ask what the scene is like out there. And so, I guess I want to know what it is like for the hardcore scene, at least, out where you come from. What is the type of picture you could paint for all of our listeners who might be interested?
Yeah. So, well, first things first, when it comes to our scene, hardcore is very particular. So we aren't considered hardcore where we are. We're considered like a metalcore band. Some say that it's a gent band.
Really?
Yeah. Because, I mean, like, when you have hardcore, you have more like, I don't know if you're familiar with the terminology, but you have more like caveman riffs and stuff like that. More like more beat down stuff. And so that's, the terminology is separated. But we have a really huge scene with a lot of great musicians. But we all seem to share a very similar fan base. And so, I mean, for us in particular, you know, we found it real hard because, like, we aren't all right in Minneapolis. And to be absolutely honest, we're kind of outcasts. Like, we're not real cool people. Like, we're cool people, but we're, for lack of better words, we're kind of like losers. We're kind of like the nerds and stuff like that of like the school days. And so, like, everyone seems to have, like, as I said, we all share the same fan base. So when you go out to play a show, it's really hard when there's like another band that has like a lot of friends involved and everything, that can pull them to there. So, in our scene, like I said, there's a lot of really great music. It's just, for lack of better words, fighting for that spot to get people to come out to see you, and not necessarily fighting for it, but working together with other bands. And we have a pretty close-knit community up here. I mean, we have a lot of different groups on Facebook and group chats where there's like a lot of different promoters in it where they're like, hey, you know, we have a show coming up this day where we try to make sure that we're not oversaturating the market as a whole, to make sure that we kind of compete less to get bigger audiences to these shows. And a lot of people seem to be on board with that. You know, there's some things you can't help where there's signed bands coming through you don't know about, or you know, someone's on tour that is coming through and they have to play a show on that day. But otherwise, like, we're all pretty much like family up here, you know. So that's kind of how it is here, at least.
I appreciate the honesty, and also I'm going to say that in general. I appreciate your real honesty about yourselves. I think that's really admirable to see someone be so vulnerable about who they are and who the band is.
Well, thanks.
I will say, as like a fellow nerd, you're welcome here. So
right. Yeah. Well, I mean, like, to go back a little bit, like. You know, I just have to comment on it, like you were just saying about being like open and vulnerable to like ourselves. I feel like as musicians, like as artists, like as people, we're always looking for people to connect with. And I feel like a lot of times, you know, I went through a lot of bands where it was like, all right, we got to look cool, we got to sound cool, we got to do all of this and that. And I'm just kind of like starting to learn as I get older that, like, yeah, that's cool, and that is a good piece of it once you get to a certain level. But when you're as small as we are, you got to be more like personable, you know what I mean? Like, you got to be able to relate to people, and just talking about music and instruments and stuff like that doesn't really get you to really connect with other people. So that's why, like, you know, even with the other guys, I'm telling them, like, you know, we try to be as open and honest as we can about every situation. I mean, there's some things you have to tiptoe around occasionally, you know, just to kind of save face. But for the most part, we try to be as open as we can. So.
You know, I think a lot of bands do kind of let a certain ego come up and put, I wouldn't say like an ego go to their head, but like an ego in the sense of that they feel that this wall has to be put up so they're not as vulnerable. And I think that's really great that you guys are very down to earth. We've had a lot of bands come on that who are down to earth, but just again, hearing how honest you are about yourselves, I love it.
Thank you.
That as well. Ooh, Timekeeper, is working hard, and it sounds like you kind of touched on it a little bit. But what's in Timekeeper's future? What do you got coming up, song wise and show wise?
Oh man, I wish we knew. So right now we're actually, I know you can see it back behind me or whatever. We're recording a new song, and we're just getting through that. We're hoping to put out a video for it here in the semi-near future, and hopefully get another one before our tour next summer that we're setting up right now. Show-wise, we've kind of cut down on shows around Minnesota, just because we find a lot of our fan base to be outside of where we are. I mean, we have some here, that's cool and everything, but we really like it on the road, and it's really hard for us to do shows around here. So the only one we really have coming up is the New Year's Eve show we're putting on at our drummer's place of work. There's like a stage downstairs and stuff like that. But other than that, a lot of things are just kind of behind the scenes right now.
Right on. Well, I mean, that's still exciting, regardless, because I just, again, I'm loving your honesty. I love the fact that you got these projects coming up. I'm glad that you're working on new music. I do think and believe Timekeeper is a must-watch hardcore band, and I think you guys deserve a lot more attention, and so I hope your touring goes great. I hope people come out and see you, because they really should. I mean, you guys, I listen to all your songs on Spotify. With that being said, we got about like 8 minutes left all here, and so
right.
we can kind of wrap this up early if you need to get out to go record, or I can ask you a couple more questions.
You honestly can ask away right now. Jawan's doing all the work. I got my stuff done, so I'm really just to be absolutely honest. After I am finished with this, I'm probably going to McDonald's or something. But just gotta
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I just got to shout out to McDonald's because we need to get that like free iced coffee on the road, dude. I tell you. But yeah, ask away.
So what is being on the road like? What is one of the hardest things about being on the road? I mean, we kind of have a general idea about it. You don't get to shower a lot. Not all the shows you go to are high paying every time. But
right.
I want to ask an actual band. I want to ask someone who goes on tour. What is the hardest part, and what is the best part of touring?
Man, the hardest part for me is coming back. Like, in all honesty, like on the road, like we've had a lot of different hardships, where like I accidentally broke like a store window, right? And like we also had like flat trailer tires. We've had venues come up with surprise fees because the way that we set them up, they didn't end up earning as much money as they thought they would, so we had to pay from what we were getting. That kind of stuff comes up, but at the end of the day, the hardest part about it is like coming back and adjusting to normal life, because whether you're gone for a week, you're gone for a month, it doesn't matter. You come back and you get this like after tour depression, which no one ever told me about. I didn't even know it was a thing, and then once I brought it up, they're like, oh yeah, that's pretty normal. But that's the hardest thing, because while you're out on the road, you get to see all these places. Like, I grew up really poor, right? And so I never got to travel a whole lot. I never got to meet people. It was back when the internet was just kind of coming up and we had MySpace. We would talk to other people out of state, but I never got the chance to be able to travel a lot, play music out of state ever for any band before this. And so like coming back is the hardest part for me, because it's like you get to meet so many people, you get to travel to new places, you get to try all these different kinds of foods that you're told to try when you go to certain places, and you come home and you just realize like how much of a like typical life people lead, like you, me, everybody. We go to work, we come home, we go to bed because we're worn out from work, and being on the road is just so freeing for me. And so yeah, that's the hardest part for me, at least. I know for the other guys, it somewhat is the money of being able to go back and be like, all right, well, we have bills to pay at home. You've kind of said that. Eating ravioli out of the cans for some people is a little bit hard, but like I again, that's the only thing I can find bad for me is like having to come back and wait to do it again.
Oh man, so that's interesting. I didn't know there is kind of like, well, what you said is a coming back. What was it? A coming back depression or after tour depression?
Yeah, like after tour depression. Yeah. Well, because you come back and like you do get in the everyday routine, but you also have this like feeling of like I'm not living up to the standards I had when I was growing up as a teenager of where I thought I'd be. And so it just makes you realize like your place in life and what you're doing, and you're off such a high from all these people coming to you every night like, oh my god, that was awesome, like we love you, we hate you, like whatever it is, it's all great while you're on the road, and you come back and you just like are in that same group of friends and stuff, and I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, it's a real thing, and it really kind of sucks. Like it lasts for quite a while, like the longer you're gone.
You know, it's well, I mean, it's part of being a band, to try and coming up the ranking, is that everything you do is to promote the band, touring, music, social media, everything.
Yeah.
And you know, we've had bands talk about that numerous times, and we had them touch on it a few times as well. And I think another thing that we also talk about a lot on the show is the commitment that is needed for underground bands to make it, because I said it before and I'll say it again, I do think we're in a kind of climate for the music industry where, you know, YouTube is such a thing, and everything is on the internet now, that I feel like a lot of young bands that aren't so self-aware of what the real world is like think that it's going to be almost immediate success, when it's
right.
anything far from the truth. And I love asking these questions, and I love hearing these stories, because I really do hope these kids hear this and understand the type of work that goes into it. And
oh yeah,
I mean, that being said, I encourage them to still chase their dreams and do it, but it is a lot of work. Now, we're getting close to the end here, so I'm going to ask two more questions, and then we'll wrap up. My first question is, what is a crazy story you're willing to share about a show that Timekeeper has played or that you've attended that you're comfortable sharing?
So I actually got a couple. I had to ask the guys last night because my memory is awful, and so I do have like a couple actually written down. So like when we were on our first tour, that was just us. We ended up going to Lincoln, Nebraska, and we went to this little bar called Duffy's, and you know, we weren't sure what to expect. You know, we didn't know if many people would be there, and all of a sudden the place filled up, and people started like crowd surfing in this little area, like the size of a standard living room, right? And this one dude just straight up like goes off the stage and ends up like getting cracked on his head, just Ooh. Falls straight on his head. And so that was something that always stuck with us, and so that's a person that really stuck out, actually. And so I'd have to say that's probably like the craziest thing that happened at one of our shows, except for when we were on our like last tour here. We were playing in Kansas City, Missouri, right? Okay. And this we pulled up, you know, we had gotten a certain guarantee for it or whatever, and we're like, that's cool. And so the promoter, it's a whole thing actually for this one. So the promoter ended up picking up another tour with two other bands. So there was 3 touring bands on this and like 2 local bands, right? And Kansas City has always been hard for us. And so we pull up there, and no one's there when they were supposed to be there, except for like the owner of the place. And he's like, yeah, I'm your sound guy. And he's like, you know, I've never done sound before. And so so all we were playing with was just our kit and our amps, and that was it. Aside from that, we're pretty sure it was a drug front, actually, because we went upstairs and we could see through the window and see some different plants and stuff like that. But then, you know, first off, there was no door guy at all, so people would just walk in and out, and we kept seeing these groups of people walking in right by the entrance. They'd stop for a second, look in the room that everyone was playing in, and they'd proceed to go upstairs and come back out a little bit while later, and then they would leave, you know. And so we got like offered like we got offered drugs by this person who was supposed to be our promoter, and then we ended up, there was like almost nobody at the show. I mean, it was kind of one of those ones, like I said, it was really hard on us, and none of the nobody was able to pull their weight properly for this one in the area that it was in and everything. And it comes to the end of the night, and this guy, the promoter, was just getting ready to leave, and he's like, here's the money for this. And I was like, okay, I thought we agreed on twice this amount. And so, and to be honest, it was $75 that he handed me. Okay. And so I was like, okay. And he's like, well, there weren't as many people here, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, need I mind you, no one was watching the door. So anyone who did come in didn't pay. And we had to deal with all the other stuff. And then the other band was like, hey, so do we get paid? And again, this is the other tour package. Like, hey, are we getting paid or what? And he's like, well, I handed Liam the money, so he'll take care of that, right, Liam? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I had to try and figure out like what he had offered these guys, and so like we each ended up leaving with like $20 or something like that. And it was just, oh god, it was the worst show that we ever experienced. But it was a trip, dude.
Part of that sounds like the premise of the green room. I'm like, jeez.
Right.
They better not say like it was like an undercover neo-Nazi bar that I was gonna be like, I'm really worried about you guys.
Dude, yeah, no, I mean, thankfully that was it. I mean, dude, it was rough though. Like the whole experience sucked. I mean, we were with our friends at the time because we had another touring band. So actually there were 4 total. And actually, sorry, like I said, my memory is awful. There was one local band. The first band that went was a part of the other tour package. So it was just a cluster of a show.
Well, shit, man, that's intense. Well, I'm glad you guys are okay. I wish you got more money than $20. That sucks. But at least you're alive, and that's what matters.
Right.
So, that being said, as we're wrapping this up, where can all the ghouls and gals and creeps and mutants go and support and listen to Timekeeper?
So we have it listed on every music platform that you can find, pretty much, except for Google Music, because they hate all of 2 songs. So, I mean, you can pretty much find it everywhere. We end up posting any of our tour dates and upcoming shows primarily on Facebook. We're starting to go into Instagram more, but a lot of our music is promoted through that. And so you can find us Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, any streaming platform that you could possibly find, we're there.
Awesome. And we'll have all those links below in the episode notes and in the description for the ghouls and gals and everyone to go and follow and like you guys. That being said, do you got any last words or any piece of advice you'd be willing to give to everyone before we close out?
To everyone? Man, I don't know if I'm the person to give advice, but
we could say, how about for other up-and-coming bands who are nervous about the music landscape?
There we go. All right, I could do that one. Mine is, like, don't stop studying, because the moment that you do, you're going to fall very far behind. And when you start to get into music, you're going to talk to a lot of people that you want to talk to that won't give you the time of day. And just keep pushing for it, because there are people out there who can help you, and you're going to learn through a lot of mistakes. And the biggest piece of advice is don't be afraid to take that leap, because a lot of people are going to tell you you're not ready for this, you're not ready for that. And honestly, if you play that route, you're never going to be ready for anything. So just go ahead and do what it is you want to do, and do it as effectively as you can with all the studying that you're doing. And just have fun with it.
I love it. Well, with that being said, ghouls and gals, this is Liam, and this is Timekeeper. Make sure you check them out. Listen to the music. Definitely some cool dudes, very down to earth. They sound completely different than how you would expect from their music, and I love that. They're really cool dudes, very heartwarming, and check them out today. Thank you, Liam, for coming on again, and for hanging out with me.
Dude, of course. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. All right, thank you. With that being said, podcast. All right, that was my interview with Liam from Timekeeper. So we have two songs coming up that they gave us to showcase for all of you, called Viridian and Traveler. But before we do that, I want to give another big, huge thanks out to Liam for coming on and hanging out with me and talking about the band. Please like and follow them below in the episode notes or description if you're listening on YouTube. If you like this episode, please, give it a like, give it a share, tell your friends and family about us. I know I said that at the beginning of the episode, but I'm going to say it again because I'm repetitious that way. I'm also kind of hopped up on coffee at the moment. So, yeah. With that being said, thank you again, Liam. Thank you, Timekeeper. And let's jump into the songs. Viridian and Traveler.